Okay, so let's go back a little bit, Chris, if we can, to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So you've got through all that initial stuff. You've now managed to do an audition. You've now actually managed to get on the program.
Yeah.
And you get on the program and you're there. And tell me what happens then. So you go through all the preliminary rounds and you're winning more and more. And
well, I didn't get as far as I would have liked to have got. You're sat in the chair. It doesn't happen. Actually, there's a funny story with it. When I did the fastest finger first, what happens is you put in your answer, and I'd seen in the rehearsals that what happens is before Chris Tarrant announces the result, a big boom camera swings round and goes down to floor level and points straight up at the person who's won it. And anyway, I was quite confident I would have won it. Anyway, I see this big boom camera comes round and it's pointed right at me. And I think, right. So Chris Tarrant comes on and he says, I don't think everyone got it right, but let's see who did. By the time he says, let's see who did, in my excitement, I'm already out the chair and gone, and I'm halfway across the studio. And when the camera cuts to the one on the floor, it's just looking at an empty chair. So they have to redo that little lot again. Didn't have to go through the whole fastest finger first again, but they had to capture me with the chair looking surprised. And you go up and you sit in the chair and you have they redo your makeup, and there's about 10 minutes between you winning the fastest finger first and actually starting on the real questions. And you get to the real questions, and unlike Weakest Link, which I'd done a couple of years before, the Weakest Link is very fast questions that fire at you. And you tend to say the first thing that comes into your head, which is generally, in my case, was always the right answer. With Millionaire, you get 4 alternative answers, and they don't help you. They actually cloud your mind. And I remember one of the very first questions I got was who carried the banner for the United Kingdom in the 2000 Olympics. It was, and up came 4 suggestions: Ben Ainsley, Mark Foster, so on and so forth. The right answer was Mark Foster. And I knew it was Mark Foster before the answers came up. But as soon as the alternatives came up, oh, golly, there was doubt in your mind. And this was one of the very early questions. And I had to use one of the lifelines because I just wasn't sure. And those alternatives, just not there to help you. They're there to trip you up.
I wonder if that's a life lesson. When you have too many options, it clouds
absolutely.
Your decision-making.
Very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder, actually, sometimes, eeny, meeny, should we, shouldn't we, could we, and so forth. And you talked earlier about the spontaneity and the speed with which you make decisions. And sometimes you see that, or some other people have obviously at some stage, because you almost wear it in a way as being impetuous. And I'm impetuous and impatient and intolerant when they won't pick up speed. Or I also find myself in conversations with people when they don't get it. I'm kind of going, what's the matter? Why don't you get it? Why don't you see what it is? Do you find yourself being like that?
Many years ago, when I was in industry, it was after I'd left the sea and I was in the computer industry, and I attended a conference of which the guest speaker was the old. He was Secretary of State in the United States under, I would guess it would be Nixon, Michael Blumenthal.
Yeah.
And he gave a talk on decision making, and it's just always stuck in my mind, and it's always been my watchword ever since. He said, when faced with alternatives, for goodness sake, you've got to make a decision. You can do this, you can do that, you can even carry on as you are. They're all valid decisions. What you don't do is procrastinate. You don't not make a decision. You rely on the fact that your wisdom, your experience, your qualifications, your learning, that 99% of the time you'll make the right decision.
You trust yourself.
And in the rare occasion where you don't make the right decision, you've learned something and you don't make the same mistake again.
But I've always thought of procrastination, and actually whatever it is that happens, you made a decision. I always think about it like that. I always think to myself, it may not have been the right decision, and you may look with the benefit of hindsight that you look back, but making a decision. And it's interesting because you're there under pressure. You started by saying to me, I knew the right answer, but you're given alternatives, and it immediately clouded your judgment.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure there's something to learn from that in the sense that by having so many options and so many choices, I mean, I find options and choices sometimes quite difficult because I appear to be impatient. I mean, so for example, if I'm shopping, I'll walk into a shop and I'll walk around and see whatever it is I want, and then I'll buy it if that's what it is that I wanted.
Yeah.
Whereas my wife and I will argue like hell because
this is
she wants to go, let's go and look at another shop. Let's go. I'm going, you
no.
saw what you wanted.
No, that drives me up the bloody wall. Yeah, but my wife will say, I mean, heaven forbid that your wife and my wife ever get together, but she'll want to go down the road because it might be 5 pence cheaper down the road. I don't care. Let's just go. Let's just buy it. So my wife and I, we don't go shopping together ever, because I mean, if we go clothes shopping, I will go into a shop because I want to buy a shirt and a trousers and a jacket. I will buy shirt, trousers and a jacket, and it will take me 20 minutes top whack. Go with my wife, and she wants me to model all the different. Oh, no.
So you can't be doing with all those.
They're
options.
a different race of people.
Okay. And I think it's interesting. It's interesting because it does drive your behaviours, doesn't it? And at its weakness, it's accusatory said you're being impatient, right? And it's not sent in a complimentary fashion at all. It's actually saying that impatience is what you're doing. Now, I think if I just go back, have you ever reflected as you grow up that in a way you maybe have been incredibly blessed with being gifted as a child?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've been blessed with a few things in my life. One, I've got a good brain. And secondly, when I was young, my mother gave me elocution lessons. And I thank goodness for both of them. If you can talk reasonably coherently and you've got a good brain in your head, then sometimes...
When she gave you elocution lessons, what did she actually do?
Oh, it sent me to a professional speech training.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What, to learn to speak properly?
Yeah.
Right, doing presentations?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds silly. I earned a living for 20 years being a professional presenter, but I never ever had any training at all. Yeah. And I learned that along the way as I was going through the process and procedure.
I used to do public speaking as a hobby when I was as a teenager. I used to do it competitively.
Okay. Right. If we look at things and you look back, okay, so let's get to a stage where you control back because we've now packed in an awful lot in a very short space of time. And I guess I didn't ask you the question which everybody else will have wanted me to ask you. So what did you actually win out of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Not as much as I would liked. I won 20,000, but I remember to this day the £50,000 question was who starred in the film Get Smart, who portrayed the eponymous character Max Smart. And I was given 4 alternatives, and I hadn't the bloody faintest idea who it was. But I had a phone a friend remaining for me, and her specialist subject was film. Now, I'd never met this lady before, and I won't say who her name was, but she knows who she was. And I got through to her, and I asked her the question, and she had not the slightest idea. In many ways, I was grateful that she didn't have an idea, because I could just say, I'll take the money. When I got home, all 3 of my children knew the answer to that question, but I'd not put any of them as a phone a friend on my designated phone of friends, and I wish I had. But on principle,
the wisdom of your children.
In principle, I've never watched that film since, and I won't. The correct answer was Steve Carell, and I will not watch films with him in it because he cost me £50,000, that man.
Okay. So from your point of view, was that a big talking point amongst all the people you knew? Because appearing on television was quite a big deal, wasn't it? Or not?
No, not really. People were quite blasé about it. The only place I ever got recognised, and still get recognised today, if a repeat ever appears on Dave or whatever Dave is called nowadays, is there's a lady on the checkouts in Tesco's, and she always seems to watch me every time. And saw you last night, but unfortunately I don't get £20,000 every time the repeat comes around. So.
Okay, I mean, I think it's, whether we like it or not or don't like it, it actually is an experience that the majority of people have never,
Yeah,
ever had, and actually wouldn't necessarily, and I'm interested as well, necessarily aspire to. I wouldn't necessarily aspire to being on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That's not something I'd actually want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's pressure, and I know it's about performing and about stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's not something that I'd really want to do. But if you'd given me the option of saying refereeing France versus Scotland, I would have refereed France versus Scotland on any day. And yet a lot of people I know would look at me as though I'm mad.
Yeah.
And what they don't understand and they don't realise and they don't recognise is, so, for example, as the rugby is on at the moment, and I refereed at first-class level, and I never really got into the echelons of being an international referee, or although I had the aspiration, I didn't actually get to that kind of level, although I was in a group of people who were kind of looked at intensively. At the end of the day, I don't think most people understand. And it's just interesting how you have that perspective of looking at life and things that happen. So, for example, as I'm watching a rugby match, I'm watching like a hawk, the referee, and I enjoy watching the game because some of the games have been disappointing, but I've enjoyed the performances.
I must admit, I'm not a great rugby fan. I prefer the round ball. But watching rugby and I generally watch the internationals. If England are on, I'll watch the internationals. But I'm utterly convinced that the only man on that pitch that understands the rules is the referee. Okay. I don't think the players have the slightest clue.
With the wish of being rugby union about it, I remember going to Twickenham, and you've just committed a big sin, which is to call them rules. They're laws.
Laws, well.
It sounds silly.
Yeah.
Jenny, my wife, was in this sort of depths of Twickenham and got corrected by this elderly gentleman. Oh, darling, it's not. They're not that. They are laws. Okay, yeah. They're not rules.
Same as cricket.
Okay, so in lots and lots of ways, I agree with you, and I think one of the things which is a huge challenge, so I'll put it out there as a challenge, is that we've never ever managed through television to translate what just happened on the pitch to the understanding or to the edification of the people who are watching the game.
Yep.
People have no idea. They just kind of accept it, and people don't argue, and they just get on with whatever the game is. And I don't think the majority of people who are watching, and they may be incidental or actual addicts watching the rugby internationals, have any idea what the laws are and what actually applied under those circumstances.
That's the beauty of football, is it's a very simple game, albeit played by probably very simple people.
But if you ask people though, Chris, even on football, to explain to you what the offside law is, they can't tell you properly.
I think they'd have a better grasp than the rugby offside rule.
They would, only because they see it with a line on television or whatever else it may. I mean, television has now gone to a lot of effort to try and make it engaging and make it involvement because of that. But in terms of rugby, the communication is now, okay, so we get mic'd up referees now, and we can hear what they're saying, and we can hear what's actually saying and what's actually going on, supposedly because it's going to be for the edification of the people who are watching the game and so forth. But I don't think the level of understanding, it's become too complex. Yeah. And I don't understand. Although I know the laws, and I do know the laws very well, when I'm watching it, I look at it sometimes and I really, really don't understand why they have just given a penalty. And there was always, when I was refereeing, there was always a conversation that took place amongst the referees at very senior level, is that there are a set of laws at international level and there are a set of laws. And at international level, they have a tolerance. So, for example, I've never, ever seen at international level a ball put into a scrummage straight in my life, ever. Because it just doesn't happen. And in lots and lots of ways, it's almost, I can see the internationals now, there's almost a predetermined piece of behaviour, which is they're going to referee this in a particular way.
But strangely, I'm an ex-professional golfer.
Right.
The rules of golf, it's the other way round. The rules of golf are adhered to far greater in the professional community than they are at amateur level. At amateur level, there's a bit of a more laissez-faire sort of attitude towards them.
I suppose because money's involved at professional level.
Cameras are focused on it. Yeah, and it's a slow game.
Unless you're Trump and you just cheat all the time.
Well, you'll find that in most golf clubs. You'll
Really?
find a trump there.
Yeah.
You'll find someone there who will, yeah.
I
bend
think
the rules a
actually,
little.
I think one of the things I'd love to be able to do, not that I will, or achieve it, is to actually break the social profile that golf has and actually involve and engage an awful lot more people, simply because it needs to reach out. I mean, I go to the local golf course and I sit there in the most palatial setting with the most beautiful view on a sunny day. I'm giving advice to golfers all over the place. I know nothing at all about it, right? But in lots and lots of ways, the social profile and the entitlement that can go with some people in the golf club is something that they don't realise, that they're cutting off a whole sector. So, for example, and I find it, and I'm going to say it publicly now, I find it shocking the fact that in Budleigh Salterton, the golf club used to exclude the locals, any of the locals going to the club, and actually almost built a separate clubhouse, which became their exclusivity.
Really?
And so it's just kind of weird in a way. And it's a game, I mean, I've only ever played one game of golf in my entire life, and that was when we went to America. And I'm with all the other guys who I'd recruited to take out and be with me and work in America. And we went to a golf course, and I'd never been to a golf course before. And of course, being an American golf course, it had literally everything. And the first thing we had to do was to select the clubs that we wanted to take. And I had no idea at all. In fact, I referred to them as sticks rather than golf clubs. I had no idea whatsoever. And so went out with a couple of people, and a couple of people tried to show me what to do and how to select the right clubs for the particular thing that we were doing. And I've got quite a good hand-eye coordination, so I could do that bit, and I could hit the ball quite well. And then I didn't really realise, but I could actually hit it quite effectively. And I used one club virtually the whole way around the entire course, and that was a 7-iron. I had no idea of its significance, but then ended up with the nickname of 7-iron because I'd used a 7-iron virtually the whole way around.
For a beginner, it's not a bad idea.
Okay.
7-iron and a putter.
Okay.
Get you
And
around most
that's
courses.
all I did.
Yeah.
And I just hacked my way around the entire course, right, doing that. So talk me through the professional golfing. How long do you do that for?
Not for that long, only for about 5 or 6 years. And I did it sort of late. I was 50 when I started. I was a club golfer. This is not playing golf professionally. This is a club golf professional and teaching it. Yeah. And you talk about kids not getting. I mean, I used to make great store about trying to teach children to how to get into golf and how to start it off. The problem I always found with children is that they would, although they would start off very enthusiastic about it, children are going through a huge physical development between the age of about 8 or 9 when they may first pick up a golf stick and the time they get to 18, 19, 20 when they're physically developed. And during that time, they've got to keep changing the equipment they've got and everything else. And it's very difficult to teach them through those transformative years because it's expensive. The parents are being asked to buy new clubs all the time. And all right, you can put in place various replacement programs, but the cost of getting into golf is a barrier for young children. If people take it up when they get to their late teens, that's fine because they're using the equipment that they're going to use for the rest of their lives. But for kids coming up, there's a huge growth they've got to go through. And if I start teaching a 7 or 8 or 8, 9-year-old child, there's only so much I can teach him because after a while he's physically incapable of going any further because he can't hit the ball far enough. And you've also really got to say to them, go away and play golf for the next 6 years and then come back and then I'll teach you how you play it properly. And that's a very difficult transition. And a lot of people drop out at that point because they can't. The courses are built for adults. Golf courses are not built for children.
Out of respect, and I really mean it out of respect and with due deference, right, that you said to me you're approaching your 80th birthday. Yeah. Right, let's look back. So you grow up and you go through, and we've talked about your school experience and what your school experience was like. And I think there's some lots and lots of lessons to be learned from what you said just about your school experience, and then you talk about then the investment that you made in terms of time and energy, about taking on a career and all the stages you have to go through, the exams you have to pass before you end up in a big ship which you're in charge of, right? The master of the ship. And I think what a great title that is, the master. I mean, I think it's an incredible title.
Yeah, the courtesy title is captain.
Captain.
But the actual rank is master.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do that, and you do that for what, 20 years, you said?
Well, I didn't do captain for 20 years,
no,
but
no.
the whole
But
time
you
at sea.
grow
Yes.
through that for
Yes,
20 years.
yeah.
And so you get to the end of that. So talk me through the end of that and then what you did.
Oh, reasons for leaving the sea. I got married. Not to my present wife, it was my first wife. I met her on one of the passenger ships. She was a passenger, I was a navigating officer. And she got to know what life was like for officers on passenger ships and wasn't overly keen on my going back to sea after that. And I can see her point.
So fraternising with the people is all okay?
Oh, it's encouraged.
Okay.
It absolutely actively encouraged. It depends on the degree of fraternisation. I mean, some people took it a little too far, but it was you had to know. I mean, part of your life as an officer on the passenger ships, you had to know how to dance.
Right.
You had to attend cocktail parties with the passengers. So even when you came off the bridge, you were still taking part in the social activity of the ships. Remember, these ships were not cruise liners, as you know today. These were liners, actually going Southampton down to round as far as Durban and then coming back again. It was people going on a journey, not on a 2-week excursion.
Okay, so on that journey, so they were part of, these were cargo ships or?
Passenger ships.
They were passenger ships as well. So you actually did both, or you
They would carry about 700 passengers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you actually had the responsibility then of looking after all of the passengers or fraternising or saying hi
I only had
all.
to look after the lady passengers under the age of 25.
Okay.
Other passengers were looked after by the purses department.
Okay. So you're there doing this, and I must admit, that must have been a grand kind of period to meet all sorts of people under all sorts of circumstances. And also, whether we like it or not, everybody loves somebody in uniform and in a ranking position in uniform. Instantly gives you major, major advantages, doesn't it?
Just a little. Yes, just a little. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got major advantages besides anything else, but a great brain and major advantages, okay? So I can imagine that kind of period. So you get married and your wife kind of goes, oh, whatever it is. So talk me through what actually happened.
Well, we then, because she was a young lady from Rhodesia, and we emigrated to South Africa, ostensibly for me to carry on find a shore job out there. My wife and I then got divorced for reasons I won't go into. But I then sort of carried on my career at sea, working in Southern Africa, working with the South African government, working with the South African Defence Force, working with shipbuilding yards in South Africa.
But South Africa at that stage would be full-on apartheid as well. Okay. Yes. So you were going through a very difficult period in South Africa.
No, it wasn't a difficult period. And this is something that I think a lot of white people struggle with when they come back from South Africa or they look back on it. And I'm as guilty as anyone else in that, is that I fell for the South African propaganda because the ships I was on were by and large going to South Africa all the time.
Right.
And what we saw when we were in South Africa was European South Africa. Right. South Africa was a European country at the bottom of Africa. We didn't realise, or we were hidden from, what was actually happening in South Africa. The townships and things were places we couldn't go and we couldn't see. The only time we saw those people in South Africa was when they turned up to work on the ship as dockers, stevedores, whatever in there. We didn't pause for thought about what their home life would be like. And it's to our shame that we didn't. And then I went out and lived in South Africa for a while. And for a long time, I can remember thinking, white people are in South Africa, and it's a very patronising way of looking at it. We were there not to be superior, But to be worse than that, you were almost there to be the parents, to look after the African people. And looking back on it, it's appalling that we were brainwashed into having this mentality. And it's after a while, you've been in South Africa, and I lived out there for a few years, you get to realise that this is a very, very unfair system. It wasn't overtly cruel. It wasn't even overtly racist. It was very hidden from.
It's divided.
Yes, it was apartheid. It was what it says. It means separate development, and we led a very privileged, separate life from other people, and yet we had, I had indigenous people working in the house. They were there to cook for you, to clean for you, and this, that, and the other. And I like to think I was good friends and a good citizen with those people, and I treated them as nicely as the law would allow. But I couldn't go and have a drink with them afterwards. I couldn't go and have a meal with them. I couldn't visit them at home, and I couldn't invite them into my house socially. And you only get to realise this after a period of time there, and you realise the whole gross unfairness of it. And not only unfairness, it was completely unnecessary.
So the inequality, you weren't kind of conscious of it at all while you were there?
became conscious of it after a few years.
It's quite interesting. I mean, it is interesting because I went to South Africa, my very first visit to South Africa. I went to South Africa on several occasions, but I went to South Africa basically to do some work and earn myself a ticket to the World Cup final in South Africa.
Yeah.
And I must admit, the divisions or the creation of those divisions were just so evident, and it was frightening to be in.
Yeah.
I mean, so for example, I found in the sort of pre-match drinks that we were having, the Afrikaans, the white Afrikaans, right, spoke in Afrikaans to exclude me from their conversation, and the arrogance that went with it was just extraordinary. I was excluded from a conversation while they were talking.
Well, rugby was always the Afrikaner sport, and cricket is the
correct.
The English.
So the Afrikaans felt that they owned it, and that we were the invaders and so forth. And when we went to the ground, I mean, it was just an extraordinary game to go to. All the blacks were toying on the road, and they were dancing on the road, and the level of celebration and the joy and delight was incredible. And then we're in the ground, which is the most amazing stadium you've ever been in, and I met the guy who was the pilot, who piloted a plane that flew over the top of Ellis Park at 300 foot. And we could see it coming in the cameras, we could see it coming up on the screen, and then it filled the stadium. So if you can imagine a rugby stadium completely filled
I've been to Ellis Park. I know the ground you mean.
The noise and the sheer size of an aeroplane flying. I mean, in the UK, you would never, ever be allowed to fly an aeroplane at that height.
Yeah.
But he apparently, because I spoke to him, he rehearsed that, I don't know how many, 20-odd times before he actually did that. But it was an extraordinary thing to be at. And then when Nelson Mandela came out wearing Francois Pienaar's shirt, and the whole place kind of erupted. I mean, it's a crazy country of extremes. Certainly was when I was there.
Well, I remember that vividly, Nelson Mandela walking out, or I was watching on television, and that reception from the crowd told me that's what all of South Africa actually wants. They may not know it now, but that's actually what they want, and probably wish they'd had back for the last 40 years since apartheid came.
I stayed actually because I was working for General Motors, and you'll know this and you'll understand it. I was working for General Motors, and I stayed at a house which they had, and the guy who ran the house, right, the so-called manservant who ran the house, he referred to everybody as master. And I said to him, his name was John, I said, John, my name is Martin. Can you stop calling me master? And he looked at me and he went, yes, master. And I went, just a complete waste of time because that was what he did and that's how he did things. I found that the entitlement that went, particularly some of the white South Africans, I don't know what your experience was, but some of the white South Africans were some of the most objectionable people I'd ever met.
It depends where you were in South Africa. Afrikaners were not the worst by any manner of means. I thought the worst were the very rich, white, privileged people, generally of English origin, generally lived in the northern suburbs of either Durban or Johannesburg.
Yeah.
And they were the worst because they had the most to lose.
Yeah.
And I remember when I left South Africa, I went to, first of all, to work in Rhodesia for a little while, and then I went to Malawi to work. And I ran the fleet of ships that sailed around Lake Malawi, which is a huge inland sea rather than a lake. It's 500 miles top to bottom. And I was interviewed by the head of the Malawi Lake Service, who came down to Johannesburg, and he was an African, Malawian, and he interviewed me, and he said, Captain Isaac, he said, if we appoint you to this, just remember, we're the Bwanas now. And he meant it in a friendly way, but I knew exactly what he meant, and it really came from his gut that he said that, and I can understand why he said it.
So you do your period of time, and then you come back. You're now working in Malawi and looking after all the boats there. And so what was the next kind of stage from then?
Come back to United Kingdom, which by then was the early 1980s, and then went into the computer industry. Because although I had a nice shiny Master Mariner certificate in my hand, what use is a Master Mariner certificate to anything else but the shipping industry? It's not. In effect, it's a license to be a glorified lorry driver. And it has no value elsewhere. And by the time I got back, and by the time the early 80s had come along, we'd gone from, in my day in the 60s, to having the biggest merchant navy in the world, as Britain, to having virtually no merchant navy at all. All gone.
Okay, so there weren't opportunities at all?
No.
So you joined in the computer industry?
Yeah.
Doing what?
Selling computers.
Really?
Yeah.
What computers were you selling?
For an American company called Burroughs.
Yeah.
And they were doing office work, accountancy and things like that.
Okay.
Very different environment.
So how did you find that transition?
Difficult.
Hard, I would imagine.
Hard, very hard. Yeah. And not that pleasurable.
Okay. Because it was so transactional and so focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was the pressure of
performance.
Performance, yes, it's performance. At sea in the Merchant Navy, we had no concept of redundancy. We had no concept that this wasn't going to be
or that you could
the career for the rest of my life.
My son uses the phrase all the time, you could get flicked just like that.
No, it wasn't part of our vocabulary.
No. So, but it wasn't part of your life experience either. And actually, if you look at it and you grow through those things, that kind of didn't happen to people, did it? I mean, people did make mistakes, do things wrong or whatever else, but it was a learning environment where people, the recovery was about learning, not about firing people or just getting rid of people or flicking people, and actually growing into that industry. Because it's really, I mean, when people talk about, Chris, being cutthroat, that is absolutely swimming with sharks all the time.
Yeah.
That must have been very difficult for you to settle into.
And even though I stayed in that industry for many years, it was an industry beset with technology's march was so quick that companies would suddenly arise like phoenix out of the ashes and would suddenly become very profitable, and they would hire you and take you on. And equally, their technology became dated and the company gone. And you had to start all over again with another company. And so you tripped from one redundancy to another within that industry. From having been in potentially a lifelong career environment at sea, you went to this extremely cutthroat environment, working under the pressure of generally of the American Stock Exchange, which is a brutal type of environment to have to work for. The only happy years I had in the computer industry, I spent 8 years of my time working for a German company. Totally different mentality. And the German company was set up, I worked for a German company called Nixdorf, and Nixdorf was founded by a chap called Heinz Nixdorf, and his whole ethos of the company is there for the benefit of the employees. That's why we formed a company. And that was how he ran the company. And they were brilliant. But it was,
So where were you based? Were you based in the UK?
In London, in the UK.
In London,
yeah,
okay. So were you travelling a lot doing that as well?
A fair amount, throughout Europe. Yeah.
Okay, so you were involved in the European sales?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you actually selling? Were you selling hard frames or were you selling desktops?
It was, funny enough, we were selling solutions to a problem. I formed a division within Nixdorf which was looking at providing retail solutions for petrol stations.
Okay.
The point of sale stuff that you see behind the counter nowadays, which links to all the pumps and everything else. Back in those days, they didn't link to pumps, and I could see that you could make them do that. And I built a system within Nixdorf, and then we took it through all the government approvals that needed to do it, and then took it out to market.
Okay. So you look back on that period with a sense of pride about what you achieved.
Yeah, we did that.
That was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a big deal. And they were quite big deals when you got them, with the major oil companies.
Okay. So to step in and actually, when you look at point of sale machines now, you must go, oh yeah, I played a significant part.
I've got over that now.
Have you?
I've got over that. For a long time, I will still look at ships, and if I go to Southampton, I will still look down the quay where the Union Castle ships used to be, and I will think, is there one there yet? Has the one come back? But no, of course they don't. But I don't look at point of sale terminals in petrol stations with any degree of interest or fondness. It's just, it happened. It was.
Okay, but you never stopped being a seaman?
No, you never stop that. No.
Okay.
Never
So
stop.
that engages or grabs your attention.
Yeah, it's a way of life. It's not just a job. No. It never was a job. No. It was a way of life.
And it's highly, highly formative as far as you're concerned.
Oh, yeah.
But also, it brings with them those sense of adventure, that sense of wisdom, the kind of learning along the way. Does it, with it, also bring a sense of, you've got to a particular point, a sense of frustration? If you look back, what are the things that you go, I wish, yes. The biggest one was, I had joined the Union Castle Line, which was one of the three major passenger ship liner companies in the country. There was Cunard, there was P&O, and there was Union Castle. And if you went down to Southampton docks on any day of the week, you would always see a Cunarder, one of the Queens. You'd see from P&O, Canberra, Oriana there. And it'd always be at least one, probably two Union Castle, the Cape liners, alongside the quay there. They'd always be there because they were run like a bus route, these ships. And I always wanted to be. My ambition was to be master of the Windsor Castle, which was our biggest ship. And by the time I got my master's certificate, and I was senior second officer on the Windsor Castle, I knew that ambition was gone. Those ships had now, the jumbo jet had come along, and there were quicker ways of getting from the UK to South Africa. All right, we speeded the ships up as much as we could. We could do Cape Town to Southampton to 11 days, but we couldn't do it in just over 11 hours, which they can do now in an aircraft. So that's the one master or captain role that you didn't get that you wish you'd got.
That's what we wanted. And that's what all my shipmates wanted. We always wanted to end up as master of the mail ships. But that ambition just wasn't there anymore. And I didn't want to be that master that I'd seen when I first went to sea, the drunk propped up on the bridge, scarred by his war experiences, and all he had was a bottle of whiskey now to remember, and he'd be dead 5 minutes after he retired. I didn't want to be that man. I didn't want to be the ship's captain sailing on a tanker going round the world, just going from one oil terminal to another. No, thank you. That was not for me. I wanted to be captain of a large passenger liner, lord of all I surveyed, prancing up and down with me gold braid everywhere. That was for me, and that wasn't to be.
So you love the status?
Well, it's a status I never got to, but it was one I aspired to, yeah.
Okay, what other wishes have you got if you look back? I mean, because as we all kind of become older or get older, we all inevitably look back and go, I wish, why didn't I, should have, could have.
I wish I'd had children younger.
Okay.
I was 47 before I got children, albeit that I got 3 of them at the same time when I got them. But I wish I'd been younger, because then I'd have enjoyed more playing football with them. So are they actually
physically triplets?
Yeah.
You said they're triplets. So you had 3 children.
Yeah.
So you went from 0 children to 3
yeah.
in just...
Well,
That must have
wasn't
been
quite like that. But
Must have been a bit of a shock.
yeah, well, it still is. Yeah.
So out of the triplets, you got
You're not going to ask me the favourite child, are you?
no. I'm not going to ask you the favourite child.
That changes.
I would never ever believe that at all. I would never believe that. I'm fortunate, and I've got two, and actually the favourite bit never ever comes into the equation. I just think what's remarkable is that you went from a position no children to instantly you've got a family, and I'm kind of thinking to yourself, you've got 3 babies to look after, 3 babies to grow up with, and 3 children to grow up and evolve. That must have been incredibly impressionable.
It's exactly the same as walking onto the bridge of a ship as your first time as master. Our babies were born at Queen Charlotte's Hospital in Hammersmith, because we were living in West London then, and Queen Charlotte's was the centre for multiple births. And 5 weeks after they were born, they went through, because they were very premature, they were in special care baby units for the first 5 weeks of their life. And then the hospital just said, you can take them home now.
Great.
And you're not given a book or a manual or anything like that. You're just given 3 babies, and you cart them out to you used to have a nice car, but you now had to have a Renault Espace or a Volvo or something like that. And you take them home and you just have to deal with it. And so we dealt with it. And they seem to have endured the experience. They've come out of it pretty well. So I think
I just think I can't even relate to that, because I can think of bringing home one and actually lying there on a changing mat and looking at her and going, I have all the responsibility for you. And you actually did that, but you've got 3 of them.
But I'd never had 1 or 2.
No, I know.
So I had no comparison to make.
You had nothing to make.
You just deal with it.
With it.
You just get on with it.
Okay.
And we had it, the room the babies were in, as babies, was about the size of this studio here. And there were 3 cots, and there was a changing mat, there was fridges, there was steamers, it was an industry. It was a cottage industry that we had there, a production line that when it came time to change the babies and feed them, it was my wife and I and an au pair girl we had there as well, pass one baby to the other onto the next stage of the, cleaning them, feeding them, burping them, winning them back in their cot. And we could do the whole lot in about 40 minutes flat. And now, my daughter, if she ever sees this podcast, will kill me for this. One of my daughters has 1 child now. And occasionally when the babies, she used to phone, oh, it's so difficult. Difficult? 1 baby? You're difficult? So anybody who complains about being difficult with 1 baby, they're pushing on a very closed door as far as my sympathy cupboard is concerned.
That is a very, very abnormal experience, isn't it? I mean, to go home with 3 children.
Yeah.
To go home with 3 children, and also 3 children growing up, and also different genders, boys and girls as well, growing up and then evolving and growing up and going through adolescence and so forth at different stages. All very, very different. I would imagine a very rich experience.
Yes, it's over in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I would love to have some of it again. My wife and I have said to each other, we would love for the children as they were at the age of about 3 or 4, just to come and visit for a weekend. Okay. Only a weekend.
Okay.
Wouldn't want them any longer than that, but just to come and visit for a weekend. I know it's not possible, but now we have grandchildren. We have one, another one on the way. We can now live that experience again, but this time without the degree of responsibility, and we can just enjoy it far more than.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I'm reminiscing and thinking as you're speaking about my experience and actually what happened. And you're right. There's some very, very precious little moments with those people, and you're not sure, and you're not convinced you may be not doing the right thing, or whatever that right thing to do is. And in lots and lots of ways, life changes phenomenally. So if you look back, and we'll actually finish on this particular note, let's give a message to your kids, right? 3 of them. I find that incredible that you have 3 children all in one go. What is your message to your 3 kids?
I'm sorry. I'm very proud of you. I'm proud the way, despite my lack of parenting skills or lack of experience when I went into it, I'm very proud of myself and my wife for how you've turned out in the final analysis. all three of you have very responsible jobs, one in the Royal Air Force, one in the police, and the other one as one of the head content writers for Zoopla on their website. They have highly responsible jobs, they're well paid, well rewarded, and they become very well-rounded adults. And they are all friends with each other, they're all very close-knit, and they all now take their duties as either parent or uncle or aunt very seriously, and they're lovely.
But what you've
lovely
engendered
people.
in them, surely, Chris, and unconsciously you've engendered it, is that mateship that you grew up with. They're mates to you, to your wife, and to each other in terms of the society that they now live in.
I claim no credit for it, but they
No, but you've done
must
it
have something
in
we
lots
did.
and lots of
as
ways.
They've come out
But
that
you
way.
lived it. I mean, you were living an example of it, your mateship, and the way that it wouldn't be necessarily quick to judge, quick to comment, and so forth, is what they've learned, that sensitivity about what it is that they do.
Yeah.
And let's hope they've taken all of the very best qualities from you and actually put them to living in their lives. And I'm sure they look at you in the same way, with immensurate pride and concern, and actually the care that's been exercised to them and the support that's been given to them. Because I've got two and they do need support, whatever anybody says. And I actually, if I implore people to do one thing, is to recognise, unconditionally love your kids, but support them throughout their entire life, because they will have challenges, but they sometimes just need someone to listen to talk to, and actually having that role and responsibility becomes crucial in terms of their evolving.
Yeah.
I think you can look upon that as a huge, huge success story. I think actually, if I reflect in terms of us, in this conversation, I would reflect everything that you've been involved in has been a huge, huge, huge success. And, you know, there may have been up times, down times and so forth, but you've ridden over all of those waves just to continue the sea kind of now. You've had to ride over all those waves to get to where you are now. You must, with huge satisfaction and a sense of pride, and I hope you've enjoyed the experience of actually recounting some of that.
I always enjoy the experience of recounting it because it brings back memories that I haven't remembered for many years. I think I've been one of my biggest good fortunes is I've always been lucky. I've always, whatever misfortune, and some misfortunes have come along, they do in every life, but I've always got through them, and sometimes just by luck, but I've always had luck on my side.
Okay, and on that note, I think we'll sort of finish this as the particular podcast that we're doing, but I do hope that you can take it and you can take the tape and you can sit down with your wife and your children and watch it and enjoy it, because I would reflect back to you, you are interesting, you're engaging, you're involving, you've done a whole bunch of stuff in your life, and you've got a seam of richness of life experience that lots of other people perhaps haven't had. But the practice, you're prepared to share it without being patronising or commanding about what it is you need to do. But you are also quite exceptional, as you were, as you evolved, and you were gifted then and you're gifted now. And in lots of ways, be grateful for that. But also, and you recognise the luck, because that's the one thing I would say, that the biggest note that you've said to me that I would understand instantly. We've both been lucky. I've been lucky and you've been lucky.
And I've enjoyed very good health.
Okay.
It's a big thing.
But you've also been lucky. It's not, the dice just happened to go that particular way. Okay, we're going to finish the podcast piece and we'll digress a little bit into kind of world events, because you sort of talked, provided you're happy to do so. I kind of want to digress a little bit over into world events.
Okay.
Because, you're coming up to 80 and I'm not quite as old as you, only by 3 or 4 years, but actually, if I look at it now, I think this is the most challenging time, not for our civilization, but the most challenging time to make sense of the world that we're living in. I mean, we're living in a political system which I've never seen a bigger upheaval. And if people use the word unprecedented again to me, everything is unprecedented. We're now listening through the scandal of Epstein. We're now listening through the scandal of the bit that gets missed and really angers me. We're living of people who've been abusive of power, who've been abusive of their relationship with other people, the exploitation of those young women and so forth. I mean,
But isn't it just technology that's discovered that? I mean, I think back to the early 1960s, the Profumo scandal and things like that. Nothing changes. It's always been there. It's just that we now have the vehicle with social media and technology.
you think we're able to share it? We know more about it.
We know more about it.
Okay. Because of your phone and that ability to communicate or that ability to connect. Yeah. I'm not so sure it's quite as simple as that. I think as a society, I think we've changed quite fundamentally. And I think actually, and I look at it and I look at the cohesion that there is and I look at the division that there is. And we were talking earlier, I mean, I grew up working in and around Sheffield and the divisions of the haves and the have-nots, and actually living through the miners' strike and living through all sorts of world events like that. I accept those patterns may not be unique in this particular era that we're growing in, but the engagement and the involvement of people, and I'm not sure if I look at it and listen to it, that there is any particular model that actually works. I despair that the political model is incapable of coping. I can't, and I'm not sure that you would be capable of living in a world whereby you have the extremes of what may be a left-wing view, a right-wing view, or a moderate view, and the recognition that actually, if you look back, even of your experience out of South Africa and growing up about how crews get on together, it's about finding some sort of middle ground and accepting whatever that middle ground is. And I'm not saying that it suddenly becomes all vanilla-like because of that, but recognize that we can't live at the extremes of what it is that people want. I mean, it's like in our conversation earlier, you look at South Africa at its most extreme, at its worst. It's diabolical, it's horrible. It really is disgusting to kind of see it. And yet, if we look at the world that we're living in now and the world that we're a part of, I mean, I think this is the 21st century that we're living in. We've got people who are living in deprivation, people who've got no skills, got no abilities, no capability of actually having a reasonable existence. How have we evolved, if that is what we've done, evolved into a position like that? I mean, you and I both have had the fortune of education, of the education that we received and the growing and the kind of learning. I mean, I say, I don't feel frightened by technology, and I think technology has been one of the biggest assets of all. And I can't, and I'm struggling to kind of, in the same category, in the same breath that people do at the moment, condemn, for example, things like AI. I mean, I think the way and the speed at which we learn and the acquisition of all that knowledge, it is in such a way. I mean, how much time do you spend doom scrolling, reading the news and finding out about what's going on? Do you find yourself doing that?
Yeah, a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
But does it frustrate you rather than solve the problems?
I don't think it does either. It educates me about the problem. I understand the problem. I can't see a solution to the problem, because wherever you look in the world, whatever political persuasion you look at, people have personal greed. And it doesn't matter if they're left wing, right wing, or whatever, they're all motivated by personal self-aggrandizement. Whether you look at, Russian dictators or American dictators now, they're motivated the same thing, personal glory.
I think the greed is of a level, and at a level that we have never, ever seen before. And people talk about it and joke about it, but it's nihilistic in terms of what it is that they're doing and where they're going and how they're going to do things. And I don't see what the end game is. So I have long conversations with my brother, and he and I were talking the other day, and I thought, if I got a big piece of paper and put down Trump at the center of that piece of paper, and I look at the web of corruption and the web of deceit that there exists and emanates from him, and the level of corruption there's been, how are people sitting, watching and tolerating what's going on?
Well, they don't have the option of doing about it yet. That option will come in through. Well, it'll come at the end, later on this year when they have the midterm elections. That if the Democrats win either of the houses in the Senate, then they can overturn what Trump tries to do. So that's one hope, and also Trump will be gone in 3 years' time, assuming he has an election in 3 years' time. But some people doubt that. But
well, I think there may be, the risk is having a civil war before that anyway.
I think there's a growing disillusionment in the Republican Party with Trump. I don't think much of the party political system in this country, but in America, I think it's far worse because he stands as a Republican, but the Republican Party had never voted for him. He never was the leader of the Republican Party. He just had enough money to stand for president. That's not really democracy. That's just, that's an oligarchy in many ways.
What I can't reconcile is the fact that we tolerate that if I turn on the television and watch the news, he dominates every single headline of every single element of news. And it may be technology's bringing us that because we now know more and see more and get more take, but it utterly dominates what's going on. And if you looked at it last night, the 6 o'clock news last night, Lord Mandelson is arrested. Right. It's unprecedented, incredible in this era that we now live in that actually has happened at all. And we also begin to peel away the layers.
But how many times should it have happened in the past?
Oh, probably. Should have.
Yeah.
I think actually you're probably right. And if you look back, you could almost accuse it in an accusatory way because it was a lifestyle thing. If I look back on my life and I look back and I can imagine now, and you kind of described it, and it's a bit of insight into some of the ship's captains who you saw and experienced. I mean, there was a world where lots of them were alcoholics anyway, and actually their lifestyle didn't encourage that, but you were surrounded constantly and continuously. So you would understand this because my mum and dad grew up in Hong Kong and then moved to Pakistan, and they lived what I would call that ethereal kind of colonial existence.
Yeah, I did in Malawi and in Rhodesia.
Yeah, the colonial existence and all the whites together and they would come together. And they ran everything and they were in charge of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were younger growing up in Hong Kong, so for example, all the white guys ran the police in Hong Kong. They controlled every single element of the society in Hong Kong. The fallout from it on a personal level was that my dad became an alcoholic as a result of it. And only when he actually stopped drinking did he begin to get any better. But you must have seen in your growing up and going through, and I just think of all the ship's captains, the number who you would have seen who were alcoholics but were never ever identified necessarily as alcoholics.
Most of them, all the alcoholic type captains, they were all captains of, they weren't captains of the big passenger ships. They were captains of the cargo ships and the tankers and never got to the top level and probably resented it. They never got to the top level. The top level captains, the masters of the Queens, of the Oriana, the Canberra, the Windsor Castle, these were men of the world. Mm-hmm. These were people who could conduct meaningful conversations with passengers, and they didn't die young. They lived perfectly naturally. I'm going to turn that off because it's there we are.
Okay. Okay. I think in lots and lots of ways. So, if we stand back where we are now, Chris. Okay, what's your biggest wish for the future for you?
For me, I want to carry on being lucky. I want to carry on enjoying the health that I do. I just want to carry on.
Do you make a big effort over your health?
No, none at all. None whatsoever. Okay. I eat what I want to eat. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I have smoked in the past. I do enjoy a glass of wine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a teetotaler, really. But I've never done that to excess. I used to smoke, but I gave that up 20, 30 years ago. I enjoy my life. I'm enjoying now watching grandchildren come along. I'm enjoying seeing my children no longer being a burden on the bank of mum and dad. They are now supporting themselves in their own...
independent and successful.
Yeah, completely independent. I enjoy that sort of thing. I enjoy...
Do you see them very often?
We're on the phone to them most days of the week. We phone one or other or all of them through... I mean, the good part about technology, we can pick up a mobile phone. I can, my daughter in the Air Force will shortly be stationed up in Lossiemouth, so we're not going to see much of her, but I can pick up the phone. I can not only talk to her, I can see her. My other daughter lives in Ipswich, and my son lives in London. Strange that they've all got as far away from us as they possibly can while remaining on the British mainland. But yeah, we see them often. They see each other often. They're always visiting each other and driving one to the other, or we will fly up to Scotland and see our daughter up there. Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. It is interesting because now, as you say, that connectivity is so much better than it was. So, for example, when Tom, my son, they emigrated and went to Australia, that was like 12 years ago, and we started, and it becomes quite ritualistic, actually, is that we FaceTime them on a regular basis. So every Sunday in the morning, we talk to him and his family, and he's really, really good at it. One of the great things is the adaptability, and it's because he spends so much time as part of his life having contact and running the organisation that he works for, which is a tech company, but so much time on calls of various sorts. So he's very adept on FaceTime and very good at listening and reconciling. So I can see my grandkids. The thing that I miss is I don't physically see them. They're not as close as they were. And I'm still kind of reeling, actually, from you and your wife, and big compliments to both. I mean, I've never met her, but big compliments to both of you. The fact that you suddenly went from 0 children to 3 children, I just find incredible.
We weren't given a choice.
No, I know, but incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. But no more after that. That was...
No, but that would be, I mean, not life-changing, absolutely an extraordinary experience. When were they born? What day? What's the date?
93.
What date?
August the 10th.
August the 10th.
1993.
August the 10th. Wow, what a day. My birthday's in August, so I'll think about them on August the 10th.
Yeah.
August the 10th, 1993.
Yeah, it'll be 33 this year.
Incredible.
And yet it seems only yesterday that
Makes birthdays expensive then, doesn't it?
Well, not so much now. They've grown out of that. At least we could get, when they were kids, we could get parties out of the way in one go, even though because they all shared the same friends. But in many ways, you had to treat them very differently to each other. You could never treat them as the triplets. They were Amy, Eleanor, Nicholas. They had to be 3 individual people. Something that was drummed into us before they were born. They said, you don't dress them alike, you don't treat them alike. They are individual people. They're never the triplets. And you encourage people. You never give a present to the triplets. You've got to give to each child individually. So, and we did that, and we managed to persuade our friends and family to treat them all as individuals. And they've grown up as individuals. They're very different to each other. They're very close. They're very, very tight with each other. But they're certainly individuals. Yeah.
Okay. So just reflect for a moment. I'm interested to hear from your point of view. What have you enjoyed about doing the podcast?
Oh, trip down memory lane. As you get to our age, there's a lot more to look back on than there is to look forward to. So you do a lot of your life remembering what. My life's been great. It's been a real adventure. I've had a lot of fun out of it, a lot of adventures out of it. It's been a very eventful life. Not all good, but most of it.
But you've had incidents and stuff that you've had to do, and you had to overcome.
Yeah.
You have to fight your way through them.
Yeah.
Sometimes things go wrong. As people used to say, shit happens, and it does happen.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And things go wrong, and you have to pick yourself up and get back up and get on with whatever it is that you're going to do and however you're going to do things.
Yeah.
Okay? Interestingly enough, because I've loved the experience of actually doing the podcast. I really have enjoyed doing them. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
You are a wise man. You are a wise man, and wisdom workers are rare. Right? I don't come across too many wisdom workers in the work that I've been involved in, but wisdom workers are the way to go. What I'm more concerned about is about how to leverage wisdom workers in terms of their influence and being the mentors to other people, because I think there's an awful lot to learn. I still would hold that model that I kind of alluded to of the Chinese and wisdom, that we need to hold on to that wisdom and somehow disseminate that wisdom into the world that we're a part of, because I don't see lots of evidence of wisdom coming to the fore in situations that we're in at the moment. I see a lot of, as you described it, selfish, indulgent, right, me sorts of behaviour rather than looking at other people. And you said some interesting things from my point of view, which is learning how, right, on a ship that you've got all the crew and everything else, so you didn't fall out with other people, you didn't have arguments. Do you ever lose your temper or become aggressive?
Very briefly. Very briefly.
Is it like a little tiny tantrum?
Yeah, it is a little tiny tantrum, and I am over it in a moment. Strange enough, my wife is the same. Neither of us loses our temper. When we do, it's a good one, but it only lasts 2 or 3 minutes, and frankly, we both feel a little bit foolish after that.
Okay, all right. Interesting. I mean, it's been fascinating. Yeah. It has been fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I hope you've enjoyed the experience.
It's been good.
It's been, you know, you'll be interested when you'll get the tapes. I'm more interested to see you afterwards when your kids have had a look at them and actually viewed them. I would imagine, in terms of timing, it's probably going to take at least, because they have to be processed and put together, it's probably going to take about a week in order to do that. Yeah. But what I'll do is I will organise that you will be sent a Dropbox link, and your kids can go on the same Dropbox link and actually access the tapes and see them for yourself. So I'll do that to make sure that
people of our age would generally say, "What's Dropbox?"
Yeah, I know.
No, I know what it is.
I know you know what Dropbox is. Okay, I would never have said it otherwise. And actually, one of my big fights in my life, and I resent my generation for not doing it, is to recognise that we have technology and it's there. Don't fight it. Join it and learn how to use it.
My children will ask you what Dropbox. You're not still using Dropbox, are you? It should be on TikTok, lasting 15 seconds, and that's it.
No, your kids will go to Dropbox instantly. They'll know what Dropbox is. And actually, there'll be also, and people would say this, and it's quite interesting because people have said to me, "Oh, well, they won't want to watch it." And I think they will actually, but they may not own up to you that they'll want to watch it, because I think having that opportunity to sit back, talk with that kind of wisdom and being a wisdom worker is really, really important.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. Sharing that wisdom is really important.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots of life lessons.
Yeah.
So, for example, I think now, and I'm sat here thinking, listening to you and so forth, I think of, you know, several things that you've said which are kind of big high points for me. Having a state of mind, having the right state of mind, and having the right mindset, and about setting about things whereby you are part of a ship's company, being in mateship and understanding what mateship is all about, and also how something else you said, which will stay with me for a long time, is how when you're given lots of choices, how it clouds your judgment because you're given all those sort of choices, and that impetuosity is not necessarily a bad thing, because I'm quite impetuous and I have to kind of make decisions and get on and do things, because I look at it and kind of go, well, I can't do anything that happened about yesterday. I've got today to deal with. And, you know, I'm going to cope with today and actually cope with what actually happens in today, rather than try and fight it and try and get to a different position altogether. But I think that's, you know, I'll be rambling otherwise forever and a day. Okay.